Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back to the year 1300, England. But this isn't a textbook tour. Nope. You're waking up in the middle of something. A door slams, a torch flares, footsteps echo off old stone. Someone's shouting, someone else is crying. Outside, there's the unmistakable crackle of fire devouring timber, thatch, and peace of mind. You scramble to your feet. Your feet hit cold dirt. No shoes, no socks. The air is thick with smoke and panic. Someone yells your name, but it's hard to tell if they want to help you or hex you. The cottage across the lane is already collapsing in on itself, bright flames licking the wooden frame like it's made of parchment. It's pitch black above. No street lamps, no emergency services, just the chaos of villagers sprinting through the dark, buckets sloshing, chickens screaming, children wailing. You grab a bucket yourself instinctively. But where's the well? It's hard to see when your eyes are watering, and the smoke makes the world feel like it's wrapped in a wool blanket soaked in fear. And by the way, if this kind of sleepy storytelling is your thing, hit like and subscribe. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe if you change your mind. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. How are you doing tonight? Now, take a breath. You're in it. You're really here. Welcome to England. The year is 1300, and you're already in trouble. The fire started in the baker's house, probably. Most do. Open flames, dry timber, warm ovens. It's a deadly mix. Town regulations say bakers have to extinguish their fires by dusk, but nobody does. You have bread to bake, and rules don't feed families. But that bread oven just sparked a disaster. Flames jump from roof to roof. Thatched straw might as well be kindling. Chimneys don't exist yet. Not really. Just holes in the ceiling, which is great if you're trying to invite smoke into every room. The fire dances to its own rhythm, fed by wind and centuries of poor planning. There's no fire brigade, no alert system, no hydrants. If you're lucky, the church bells will ring and wake the drunk constable. If you're not, you better know how to carry a full bucket with one arm while shielding your eyes with the other. Now you're barefoot in mud, clutching your cousin's cloak. You're not even sure it's his, but survival means borrowing everything that isn't nailed down. Some people run toward the fire with pails. Others run away with whatever they can grab: pots, bread, their mother's bones, and some just stand and stare. Fire in 1300 isn't just destruction. It's divine judgment, punishment for secret sins, bad omens from bad stars. You cough hard. The acrid stench stings your lungs. Someone nearby prays aloud, mixing Latin with desperate local dialect. It sounds less like a hymn and more like a bargaining attempt with an impatient God. You spot the reeve, the village official, trying to organize people, but he's got soup stains on his robes and his hat's on backward. Not ideal leadership in a crisis. "Line up by the well," he screams. No one listens. Fire has that effect. When the sun finally threatens the horizon, there's no golden warmth, just smoke rising from a dozen blackened shells that used to be homes. Yours? Half of it collapsed, but you're alive. For now, you sit in the dirt, holding a cracked cup that wasn't yours this morning. A child is crying beside you. No one knows whose child. The local friar wanders through the ruins humming a psalm, offering spiritual comfort to a community that really wanted water instead. You try to count who's missing. Not that it matters. There's no census. If your neighbor disappeared in the flames, they're just gone. If they're still here, they'll probably steal your goat before noon. As the fire cools, accusations warm up. Who left their fire burning? Who angered the saints? Someone swears they saw a woman whispering at her door. She's been strange ever since that cat followed her home. A whisper rises. Which? You make a mental note. to not look too clever today. Historians still argue whether witch hunts were already systemic in 1300, or whether they were more like slow-building neighborhood drama with murderous outcomes. Either way, you know better than to be the only one without soot on your face. It makes you look suspiciously clean. And still, there are laws to follow. Even now, someone mentions the assize of bread and ale. Yes, that's a real thing. A royal law dictating the price of bread based on the cost of grain. If you break it, huge fine, or worse. You glance nervously toward the baker's house. What's left of it? If he survived, he might still get fined. Imagine surviving a fire just to be dragged to court over sixpence and a burnt crust. And this is just Monday. The thing no one tells you about medieval England is how normal disaster feels. Fires, floods, famines, fevers. They're not breaking news. They're the weather. You build your day around them. You budget for loss. You expect a setback every few weeks. You're not surprised that your neighbor just lost his shed and his only cow. You're surprised it took this long. And yet, weirdly, you carry on. By midday, someone's already rebuilding with damp timber and sheer denial. Smoke still curls from smoldering beams. A few chickens reappear, confused, but alive. A pig sniffs at the ashes like it's shopping. And through it all, someone insists this is fine, that the Lord tests the worthy, that King Edward himself would be proud of your resilience. You find this hard to believe. King Edward doesn't even know your village exists. But you nod anyway. That's survival too. And if you listen close, you'll hear something hopeful. A blackbird singing from the church roof, like nothing happened, as if the sky hasn't changed, as if soot and sorrow were just part of the morning air. You lie back, using your scorched cloak as a pillow. You try to rest, because you survived the fire. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, you'll wake up starving. You wake to hunger. Not just missed breakfast hunger. No, this is the hollow scraping ache that makes your ribs feel like they're whispering secrets to each other. Your stomach folds in on itself. It's been whispering too. Something about dry oats and last week's radish, but you don't have either. You blink against the ash, still stuck in your eyelashes from last night's fire. The cottage smells like wet wood and fear. Your bed was a straw mat on the floor, and now even that's damp and half burned. There's no door, just an old linen sheet blowing in and out with the breeze like a lung that can't catch breath. You swing your legs out of what's left of the bed and put your feet down carefully, just in case a rat hasn't moved out yet. And sure enough, there's one. Fat. Smug. It licks its paw, judging you like it paid rent. You try to kick it, but it's faster than you. It vanishes through a hole in the wall you swear wasn't there yesterday. You make a mental note. Fix that hole. But first, food. The trouble is, food doesn't want to be found. Not in 1300, and especially not by someone like you. Just another tenant on the manor, scraping the edge of survival. You shuffle toward the hearth. Nothing but ash and one tiny onion that looks like it lost a fight with time. No bread, not even crumbs. And technically, if you did have bread, you could get arrested for it. That's not a joke. Under the assize of bread and ale, it's illegal to make or sell underweight bread. Bakers caught cheating can be pilloried or fined, and even you could be punished for buying black market loaves that don't pass muster. Of course, nobody checks the bread until someone complains, but still, risky business. And flour? Good luck. The local mill is controlled by the lord of the manor. He takes his cut. Literally. It's called multure, and it's his right. Try milling grain at home and you'll face more than a slap on the wrist. You'll get fined. Or worse, shamed at court and shunned by neighbors. So you check the pantry, though you already know what's in it. Disappointment, 3 dried peas, and a beet that's mostly beet in spirit. You sigh. You'd trade your boots for a bowl of pottage, but guess what? You don't have boots. Outside, the village stirs. Smoke curls from newly rebuilt hearths. Someone sings an off-key ballad about St. Cuthbert's lost sandals. You wander outside where the mud is soft, deep, and unrepentant. You step directly into a puddle and feel cold seep between your toes like shame. You walk toward the communal oven in the center of town. It's where some villagers bake their dough after kneading it at home. But even here, the smell of bread feels like a cruel joke. It's someone else's bread, not yours. Probably the Reeves. He gets first pick. A cluster of children crowd around the bakery wall. One boy whispers that there's a rat big enough to ride living behind it. You're not sure if that's an exaggeration. Based on last night's visitor, it might be true. Back at the edge of town, a farmer is arguing with a merchant over some shriveled apples. You get closer just in time to hear the best insult of the day. Your mother's ale wouldn't bless a leper. Strong words. You lean casually against a post, hoping someone might offer you a crust out of pity. No one does. And that's when you see it. A cart rolling down the lane, pulled by a donkey that looks like it regrets being born. On the cart, saltfish, dry, stiff, and vaguely shiny. Not appetizing, but it's something. You dig in your pouch, 1 farthing, and a small pebble you meant to skip across the river last week, but never got around to. Not enough for fish. The vendor shouts that he takes credit. He means your future labor. You nod and fork over the coin. He drops a fillet in your hand like it's a gift from the heavens. You sniff it. It smells like betrayal and the bottom of a boat. Still, you eat. And here's the twist. That fish might kill you. Why? Because food preservation is a medieval gamble. Salted, smoked, pickled. Sure, but there are no safety standards. Historians still argue whether the average medieval diet helped longevity by keeping people lean, or harmed it with constant exposure to spoiled food and parasites. Spoiler, it's both. You chew carefully. There's something crunchy in the middle. Probably not a bone. Probably. Now foolish, you wander toward your cousin's cottage. He owes you a favor. Last month, you helped him chase a sheep out of the chapel. You knock on his warped doorframe. He opens it halfway, peeks out, and says one word. Weevils. You blink. He sighs and hands you a small cloth sack of grain. It wriggles. You try not to gag. Later, by the river, you sort grain from bug, whispering to yourself like a monk performing a dark ritual. It's tedious, but you're not the only one. Half a dozen villagers sit near you, doing the same thing. It's oddly meditative. And that's when it hits you. This is the rhythm. The medieval day isn't busy the way you know it. It's slow, hungry, grimy, and full of effort. Every bite of food is earned twice. Once through labor, again through luck. A few meters down the lane, you spot old Judith. She's legendary. 80 or maybe just 30, and very tired. Nobody's sure. She carries a stick and wears 12 shawls regardless of weather. She's muttering something about a famine curse. You pause to listen. According to Judith, the land is angry because a noblewoman once planted roses over a buried saint. That's why barley won't grow this year. Totally tracks. You nod solemnly. She eyes you like she knows you stole a turnip last summer. Maybe you did. Who remembers? You thank her, shuffle away, and decide not to plant roses, just in case. By sundown, your stomach rumbles again. The fish is gone. The grain is half cleaned, and someone across the village has just roasted something that smells suspiciously like pigeon. You close your eyes and imagine it's lamb. Spoiler, It's definitely pigeon. That night, you curl up under your half roof, listening to the sounds of small feet in the walls. Rats. Again. But they're fed. And that's more than you can say for yourself. Still, you're alive. And tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be chores. You wake before the sun. Mostly because your feet are cold and something scurried across your cheek a few minutes ago. A mouse, probably? Or a rat? Or the ghost of that onion you meant to eat, but lost to the dog 3 days back. You stretch. Your back pops like a bundle of firewood. Straw mattress? More like straw suggestion. Half of it's damp. The other half is missing, probably used to patch a hole in the roof that still leaks anyway. And then the smell hits you. Outside, the world is stewing in its own breath. Muck, manure, wood smoke, yesterday's fish, today's cabbage. Someone nearby has already lit their hearth, and the breeze politely delivers it through the hole in your wall. Welcome to morning in 1300s England. You step outside into a slurry of mud and regret. The earth squishes beneath your feet. Not just water. No. The path is laced with everything the village has to offer. Pig droppings, horse leftovers, human waste, tossed from chamber pots in the dark. A stew of civilization. You pass a boy using a flat stone to scoop the street sludge into a ditch. That's his job. Not a punishment, just a morning task. You nod to him. He sneezes. Into the wind. Blessings. Time for chores. First, water. The well is on the other side of the village because, of course it is. You grab your bucket and make the pilgrimage, passing the same people every morning. Everyone wears layers, shawls, tunics, caps, because it's cold, and also because clothes double as bedding. You nod at a man digging a trench beside his house. He nods back with the weariness of someone who just found a dead cat in his grain bin. When you reach the well, the queue is already 5 people deep. 2 women gossip loudly about a traveling monk who claimed he could read dog minds. The conversation turns to ale, and then to that cow that keeled over last week. You'll get to that later. By the time it's your turn, the rope is slick, the bucket is chipped, and your hands are shaking. Still, the water's cold and clear, miracle enough for the day. You head back slowly. A chicken follows you for a while. You don't question it. Next, fuel. You need firewood, but trees are technically owned by the lord of the manor. You can't chop them down. That's a fine. A big one. But fallen branches, those are fair game. So you set out toward the edge of the forest with a small sack and a sharp eye. The woods are still misty. Soft light filters through branches like stained glass. It would be beautiful, if not for the constant fear of outlaws, wolves, and taxmen. You're not alone out here. A girl from the next hamlet is also gathering sticks. She hums softly, eyes on the ground, basket swinging. You nod. She doesn't nod back. Maybe she thinks you're a thief, or maybe she's just cold. You find a fallen limb and tug at it. It's heavier than expected and smells like mushrooms. Good enough. You drag it back through the muck, arms aching. When you pass the church, the bell rings once. No service, just a time signal. 3rd hour. Roughly 9 a.m., if the sun's in a generous mood. Back at home, your hands are numb and your bucket's empty again. You've used most of the water already, washing your face, boiling some mystery greens, and scrubbing last night's bowl. Scrubbing, by the way, means rubbing with sand and hoping for the best. You stir the pot, cabbage soup, or maybe nettle. It's hard to say. The broth smells vaguely like socks, but it's warm and that's enough. You sip, and you're proud of yourself, until something soft and unexpected floats to the surface. A beetle. You name him Jeff. Then you remove him, thank him for his service, and continue eating. mid-morning brings livestock chores. You don't own a cow, but you do care for one. It belongs to the manor, but you're one of the tenants assigned to feed it. You walk to the field where the cows are kept, carrying a handful of hay and a song you don't remember learning. The cow's name is Maud. She's older than the chapel floorboards and smells like sour butter, but she recognizes you, snorts gently. You pat her nose and check her hooves. One looks sore. You say something comforting like, "Don't die," and she blinks slowly. You take that as a promise. You fill her trough. Another villager, John with the big eyebrows, arrives with oats. He grunts a greeting. You grunt back. Medieval small talk. After that, mucking. The pigsty, your favorite. You shovel slop and old straw into a wheelbarrow that hasn't had a working wheel since Edward Longshanks was still a teen. The pigs grunt in solidarity. One of them nudges your leg, hoping for something edible. You toss him a turnip top. He seems satisfied. This, by the way, is where fringe facts flourish. Did you know some medieval people used pig bladders as storage pouches? Real thing. Waterproof. Lightly horrifying. You pause, stare at a particularly smug pig, and wonder if he knows. He does. He definitely does. Back at your cottage, you pour the muck into a compost heap. A small cloud of flies rises like a curse. A few chickens scuttle in to peck at the mess. You let them. They're the cleanup crew. You're filthy. You stink. Your arms ache. But the sun's higher now, and for a brief moment, you can feel warmth on your skin. A rare treat. You sit on a log, wipe your brow, and sip the last of the well water. You've earned it. Of course, no day is truly finished without some neighborhood drama. A boy runs past yelling something about sheep in the churchyard. Again. You ignore him until a woman, Marjorie with the loud voice, points directly at you and shouts, "It was his goat last time." You blink. "I don't have a goat." "That's what you said last week," she hollers before stomping off. You sigh. Gossip is the real local currency. Historians still argue whether village life fostered deep community or constant low-level paranoia. Probably both. You know most of your neighbors by smell, not name. And while that's endearing in theory, it also means everyone knows when you sneak food, spill water, or trip into a ditch. You did that last Thursday, twice. By now, your hands are stained and your knees are caked in clay. But the chores are mostly done. You patch the hole in your wall with a bundle of reeds and a prayer. You swat a fly off your forehead and finally, sit. The sun is beginning to lean westward. Shadows stretch across the lane. Children chase a dog that definitely doesn't belong to anyone. And from the woods, you hear a hermit shouting something about frogs being spies. Standard. You rest your head against the doorframe, such as it is, and let your eyes drift shut. You made it through another morning. And next comes church. Get your Latin ready. Church bells toll like a giant trying to wake up the village with a headache. A long, slow clang that rolls through the fields and stirs even the sleepiest chicken into a small panic. Time for Mass. You're not feeling particularly holy, to be honest. You're sore, tired, vaguely damp, and your stomach is trying to digest itself. But missing church isn't really an option. It's not just about faith. It's about fear. Skipping Mass invites questions. And in 1300s England, questions tend to come with accusations and, eventually, torches. So you scrape what's left of your dignity off the floor and get dressed. Your best tunic is still stained with yesterday's soup, but it smells mostly neutral. You rinse your hands with what remains of the well water and try not to think about how many other people have touched the same bucket rope today. Hint: a lot. You step outside and join the slow, creaky procession of villagers drifting toward the church. The building looms ahead like a warning. It's the biggest structure for miles. Stone walls, small stained glass, and a roof that leaks in 3 strategic places. You pass a man mumbling Ave Marias as he walks. Not devotion. He's just practicing. The priest tends to quiz people mid-sermon, and nobody wants to be the fool who forgets the difference between mortal and venial sin. You cross the threshold into the nave and breathe in the smell. Incense, dust, old wood, and human worry. The space is dim. Light slants through the colored windows in dusty beams that look solid enough to lean on. You take your place near the back, behind a woman with a baby that's somehow both asleep and drooling on everything within reach. The priest enters. He's wearing a robe that's seen better centuries, and his beard has its own ecosystem. He coughs. Loudly. Then again. He coughs so hard he has to lean on the altar. You glance at the person next to you. They raise an eyebrow. Plague? Maybe. Or just too much mead. You murmur a silent prayer, not to the saint on the wall, but to your immune system. Mass begins. It's in Latin. You don't speak Latin. Almost nobody does, but you recognize the rhythm. Words rise and fall like waves, and you try to bob along with them. Occasionally, the priest makes eye contact, and you nod sagely, even though he just said something about divine horticulture. People shift their weight, kneel, stand, sit, kneel again. You try to keep up. The floor is cold. Your knees ache. Your mind wanders. You remember when Brother Alwyn tried to translate the Bible into English and got banned from 5 villages. Not for heresy, mostly because he was loud and wouldn't stop explaining things during supper. You suppress a yawn. The baby starts crying. The woman beside you tries to nurse discreetly with a shawl. The priest shouts louder to drown them out. You miss the middle bit of the sermon, mostly because you're distracted by someone whispering behind you. Something about a black dog seen in the churchyard again. That's bad news. Black dogs mean death. Or bad weather. Or sheep panic. Depends who you ask. Then the priest pauses dramatically. He's staring straight at old Thomas, who's clearly asleep. Fornicatio, the priest declares, and the room freezes. Everyone turns to Thomas. He wakes up mid-snore and says, "Amen?" The tension breaks. A few chuckles. One gasp. The priest sighs and moves on. It's not uncommon for sermons to detour into sin-naming. This week, it's fornication. Last week, it was idle hands. And once, it was wearing colors not fit for your station. That week didn't go well for the cooper's wife and her red sash. Historians still argue whether medieval sermons genuinely shaped morality, or were more like spiritual theater with a side of public shaming. Either way, they worked. You feel thoroughly judged. The second half of the service involves communion. You line up with the others, trying to look appropriately penitent. The bread is dry, the wine is bitter, and the priest's hands are trembling. You glance at the chalice. It's chipped. You try not to imagine how many mouths it's touched. You close your eyes, accept the wine, and hope the alcohol kills whatever it needs to. After communion, someone faints, just drops, right next to the font. They're breathing, though. Probably skipped breakfast. Again. The priest signals for help, but nobody rushes forward. They're busy muttering about omens and fasting, and maybe a ghost in the rafters. You help lift the person because you're decent, and because you'd like some spiritual credit just in case St. Cuthbert is watching today. Once the sermon ends, everyone exits in a slow shuffle, mumbling blessings, and looking relieved to have survived another round of guilt and Latin. Outside, the light is sharp. You squint. Someone sneezes nearby. You take 2 discreet steps away. You overhear 2 boys arguing about whether angels can beat dragons in a fair fight. One swears he read it in a monk's book. The other insists dragons are faster. You silently place your bet on angels. They cheat. As you walk back home, you spot something strange. A small bundle tied with string sitting near your door. Inside, bread. Not much, just enough for a meal, still warm. You look around, no one in sight. Could be a gift, could be bait, could be an apology from Marjorie with the loud voice. Unlikely. You take it inside and break it in half. The crust is hard, the center soft. It tastes like flour and miracle. You spend the afternoon in quiet gratitude. You even hum part of the hymn from this morning. Not because you understand it, just because the melody is oddly comforting. You sweep your floor, stitch a hole in your sleeve, watch clouds roll over the horizon. For a moment, things feel almost peaceful, until you hear shouting near the village green. And someone yells, "The goose vendor's fighting the fishmonger again." You sigh. Church was nice, but now it's market day. And that means chaos. It begins with a goose honking, like it's seen the end of the world. Then a cabbage goes flying. You follow the noise, weaving between huts and alleys, past Marjorie's suspiciously neat turnip patch and the pile of mystery bricks nobody's claimed since spring. At the village green, everything is in motion. Chickens darting, carts creaking, the blacksmith arguing with a bard. And in the middle of it all, yes, there they are. The fishmonger and the goose vendor. Both shouting, both red-faced. One's waving a gutted trout, the other's brandishing a flapping goose like a feathery mace. You sidestep a wheelbarrow full of spoiled parsnips and edge toward the nearest food stand. If you're lucky, you might score a bruised apple or two before the real fighting starts. Market day in 1300s. England is less quaint booths and coin pouches and more mud wrestling with vegetables. It happens once a week, or more if the local lord allows it, and it's the only day anyone gets to pretend they're in charge of their own economy. You've come for onions, maybe some beans. You've stayed for the performance. Every merchant claims their goods are divine. Literally. One swears his bread recipe came from St. Bridget in a dream. Another insists her garlic wards off plague and nosy neighbors. You pass a stall where a man sells live eels from a barrel. They writhe like a single slippery monster. He offers you one for a half-farthing and a song. You keep walking. Next to him, a woman offers curative eggs, which seem suspiciously like regular eggs with a smudge of ash. She claims they protect your dreams, or your chickens. She's still refining the pitch. And then you spot her, Alice the candlemaker. You owe her 3 pieces of beeswax and a favor. She sees you. You wave. She does not wave back. Uh-oh. You duck behind a sack of barley and pretend to inspect it. It smells fine, looks half weevil-free, and has a price written in chalk, 1 penny per bushel. You check your pouch. 1 halfpenny and a dull nail. You offer both. The vendor takes the nail. Fair trade. You're halfway through haggling for a slightly bent spoon when the commotion escalates. The goose vendor has lost her grip. The goose is airborne. It flies, well, flaps, across the square, honking its indignation, before landing directly in the arms of a friar who immediately declares it a sign from heaven. The fishmonger faints. A bell rings. Not the church bell. This one's smaller, sharper. The market warden's handbell. He's trying to restore order by shouting things like, "Calm thyselves," and "Bread is not for throwing," while dodging a flying leek. You duck too, just in time to avoid getting slapped by a herring. It lands with a wet thwack at your feet. You step over it and make your way toward the cloth stall. This is where things get serious. Cloth is currency. It's luxury. It's the stuff of dreams. A single yard of dyed wool can cost more than a month's labor. You run your fingers over a bolt of dull brown linen and imagine what it'd be like to own a tunic with no patches, no holes, no smell. Then you remember sumptuary laws. That's right. In 1300s England, what you wear is controlled by law. Peasants can't wear silk, can't wear certain colors, can't even wear a belt that's too fine. The crown wants to make sure everyone knows their place visually. You look down at your patched sleeves. You are clearly in your place. You back away from the cloth stand before you do something dangerous, like fall in love with indigo dye. At a nearby booth, a man sells relics. Finger bone of St. Crispin, he claims, holding up something that might actually be a chicken toe. A woman asks, "Will it cure my husband's cough?" "No," he says, "but it'll make you feel better about it." Fringe fact: people in the Middle Ages were obsessed with relics. Saints' teeth, scraps of robe, splinters from the true cross. Anything could be sacred if it came with a good story. Historians still argue whether some believers truly thought these bits held power, or if they just enjoyed having a conversation piece for their pilgrimages. You nod politely and move on before he tries to sell you a saint's eyebrow. You finally make your way to the food stalls again. You find a handful of limp carrots, a wedge of soft cheese with a name like Bishop's Crumble, and a honey cake that's mostly crust. You buy the cake. It's sticky and dense and tastes like joy, if joy were slightly burned. A boy runs past laughing, wearing what looks like a duck on his head. Behind him, someone yells, "Bring that back, it's alive." You do not get involved. Instead, you find a low stone wall and sit. Your feet ache. Your fingers are stained with beet juice and wax. You've been jostled, overcharged, and very nearly beamed by a turnip. Still, you've got food. You've got stories, and a surprisingly decent spoon. You close your eyes and breathe in the market air, spiced, chaotic, human. Then you hear the pipe. A slow tune, rising above the din. Everyone quiets a little. Heads turn. A musician's arrived? Rare, but not impossible. Traveling entertainers sometimes visit on market days, trading music for meals and lodging. This one's playing something that sounds like a lullaby mixed with a war song. Children cluster around him. Adults inch closer, trying to look disinterested. You watch as the music softens the sharp edges of the day. The geese stop honking. The friar sets the miraculous bird down. Even Alice the candlemaker lowers her glare for a moment. The piper finishes his song with a slow flourish. Silence. Then applause, soft, polite, relieved. And just like that, the spell breaks. The crowd reforms. Deals resume. You spot someone bartering a comb for a sermon, and someone else offering a prayer in exchange for bacon. You decide you've had enough commerce for one day. As you rise, a merchant calls after you. Looking for a charm? Keeps your pigs loyal. You don't turn around. Your pigs are already loyal. Probably. You walk home with a half-eaten cake, a bent spoon, a new bruise on your shin, and the lingering hum of the pipe still in your head. The sun begins its slow descent behind the tree line. Smoke curls gently from chimneys. Somewhere in the woods, something howls. Or maybe it's just a particularly enthusiastic cow. You've survived market day. Now all you have to do is survive the workplace. And let's be honest, you're probably getting paid in soup. You arrive at the manor fields just as the sun ducks behind a pale ridge of clouds. The sky's gone sallow. A few crows circle overhead, dramatic, but not unusual. Everything in this part of the world has a flair for the theatrical, especially weather and fate. The field smells like trampled grass, manure, and the collective despair of a dozen bent-backed workers. Welcome to your job. You're a villain, sort of a tenant, sort of a peasant, sort of owned. It's complicated. You don't have a boss in the modern sense. What you have is obligation. You owe the lord of the manor a set number of labor days every week, and today's one of them. If you skip, it's not like getting fired. It's more like being fined, shamed, and possibly reassigned to a worse job, like collecting leeches. Again, your task? Turn the earth. Harvest rye, spread muck, chop weeds, chase birds. Whatever they point at, you do it. It's like being a living to-do list. You pick up a hoe that's more rust than wood and join the line. No greetings, no small talk, just that universal glance of shared misery. You start to work. The soil is cold and packed, stubborn with frost just below the surface. Every stroke of the hoe sends a jolt up your arm like you're arguing with a boulder. Next to you, a man coughs violently. He wipes his mouth on his sleeve. You look away. Another worker mutters something about St. Ethelbert and stretches his spine until it sounds like firewood snapping. Someone else whistles the same three-note tune all medieval laborers know, the one that's just enough rhythm to keep your arms moving, but not enough joy to feel like music. Your hands blister quickly. You're not made for this, not really. But then, nobody is. You're just expected to pretend. After an hour, your tunic is soaked through. Your back is a single knot. The sky spits a bit. Not rain, just a reminder. You work faster. And then the steward shows up. He's the manor's middle manager, more silk than sweat, riding a horse that looks bored of him. He shouts something about quotas and quality. Then he points to a pile of thistles and says, "They're your fault." You consider arguing, but he has a writing tablet and a sharp memory, and your rent is already overdue by 3 turnips and half a hen. So you nod, mutter, "My fault," and dig harder. Lunchtime comes. You gather with the others by a tree stump. Everyone unwraps their midday meal. Bread mostly, maybe a little cheese. Someone has dried apples. You pretend not to notice. Your own lunch is what's left of your honey cake from market day. You chew it slowly, like it's a roast boar. You share a crumb with a nearby dog. He's missing an eye and 2 teeth, but he wags once. Mutual respect. You try to sit. The ground's damp. Your knees crack like old leather. Someone tries to tell a joke about a nun, a bucket, and a confused monk, but he forgets the punchline halfway through. Everyone laughs anyway. Hunger makes you generous. Then the steward clears his throat again, and lunch is over. Back to work. You spend the next hour dragging a rake through the mud, then clearing stones from a patch the reeve insists is cursed. You don't ask for details, probably best not to know. Your fingers are raw. Your boots, if you can call them that, are soaked through. At one point, you slip and land in a puddle so cold it feels like judgment. Someone offers you a sip of ale. You accept. It's warm and bitter and tastes like a miracle. You keep working. And finally sunset. The steward declares the day finished. You stand, stretch, and wince at a sudden twinge in your side that might be a pulled muscle, or might be a permanent feature now. You're paid in soup. No, really. Today's wage is a bowl of something the cook insists is mutton. You suspect it's turnip with confidence, but it's hot, and it fills the hollow. One of the other workers complains about wages again. He's muttering that the statute of laborers is unfair, that after the plague, everyone should have gotten raises, but instead wages were frozen. And technically, he's right. That statute won't be written for another few decades, but the seeds of exploitation are already deep in the soil. Historians still argue whether medieval workers were aware of their economic leverage, especially post-plague. Some say they quietly rebelled through slow work and fake injuries. Others think they were too crushed by fear and obligation to risk it. Either way, your back hurts too much to debate. As you walk home, you pass the manor house. It's bigger than anything you'll ever live in. Stone walls, tiled roof, real glass in some windows. The Lord isn't home. He's off hunting or politicking, or maybe just avoiding this whole muddy world. You wonder briefly what it's like to eat meat without guessing what animal it was. The sky darkens. You pass a small shrine by the road and nod toward it. A habit? Insurance? You don't remember which saint it honors. Doesn't matter. They're all overworked anyway. At home, you peel off your tunic and shake the mud out like it's trying to cling to your soul. You sit on the floor near the hearth, toes splayed toward the fading coals. Your breath fogs in the cool air. Outside, you hear voices, laughter, a lute, someone celebrating something, probably a wedding, maybe a pig birth. Doesn't matter. You close your eyes and let the sound drift over you like a blanket made of memory. Your hands throb, your back creaks, your eyelids sag. You survived another day of work. Tomorrow, you'll eat soup again. And maybe, just maybe, see a cabbage that isn't entirely hollow. Your dreams that night are strange. You're chasing a goose through a burning field, wielding a spoon like a sword. A fishmonger is yelling encouragement in Latin. The goose wears a crown. You wake up hungry. Again. The embers in your hearth are cold. Outside, someone is singing. Badly. Maybe they never stopped. Maybe the song's about you. You're not sure. You sit up slowly, stretch until your joints sound like dry wood snapping, and check your food stores. Still low. You root through a cloth sack and find something that might be a parsnip or a particularly old turnip wearing a disguise. You sniff it. Not too bad. Edible if boiled within the hour. You boil it. It's the only thing that feels certain. It's not just you. Everyone's scraping. You step outside and notice 3 people staring at their gardens with the same expression you use when you lose a sock. Quiet betrayal. The weather's turned strange. Crops aren't behaving. Rain falls when it shouldn't. Sun hides like it owes someone money. No one says the word famine out loud, but everyone's thinking it. You walk past a neighbor's pig pen. Empty. Last week it was full. You don't ask. If someone's pig goes missing, you learn not to look at your stew too closely. Down the lane, a child pokes the earth with a stick, hoping to trick it into sprouting something out of fear. No luck. The earth is unmoved. You head to the village green, where the community cauldron sits over a low fire. It's soup day, the informal system where everyone adds whatever they can spare into a shared pot. This morning, it's mostly water, cabbage stalks, and what looks like moss. Someone mutters it's good for the liver. You hope it's also good for the soul. You contribute a bit of salt you were hoarding. It's your only luxury. But your stomach overrules your pride. You get a ladleful in return. It tastes faintly of something green, possibly hope. Next to you, old Godric is eating what might be boiled grass. He claims it's field salad. He also claims he once arm wrestled a knight and won, so you take it with salt. Literally. Eat light, he says. Keeps the demons from your gut. You nod politely. You've heard worse advice. In a dry patch of field, 2 men argue over a patch of wild leeks. Technically, foraging is free, but so is yelling. And these 2 are investing heavily in both. You keep walking, just far enough to pretend you didn't hear the part about settling this with sticks. Later, you visit the miller. The local grain mill is a hub of tension. It's run by a man with powerful calves and suspicious eyes. You hand over a small sack of barley and watch him weigh it with the focus of a man who once lost a lawsuit over a thumb on the scale. He takes his cut. It's not generous, but it's better than nothing. As he grinds, he hums a dirge-like tune. It sounds like a warning, or maybe it's just the song of someone who's seen too many worms in the flour. You leave with less than you hoped for. As you head home, someone offers to trade you a pigeon. Dead. Slightly suspicious. You accept. At home, you pluck the bird. It's small, but it's protein. You roast it over a fire the size of a candle flame. The smell fills your cottage and your neighbors. Sure enough, there's a knock. It's Alice, the candle maker. You cooking rat? You blink. Pigeon. She shrugs. Close enough. You offer her a bite. She takes it. You both chew in silence. This ain't bad, she says. Better than that barley cake last week. You nod. Fewer pebbles. She stays a while, eating slowly. When she leaves, she hands you a lump of wax. For light, she says. Or teeth, if you're desperate. You laugh. You might even mean it. Later that evening, you sit on your doorstep, watching the stars blink to life. One falls. A real one. You make a wish. It's short and vague. Survival is too complex to summarize. Your stomach is mostly full. Your hands are only mildly burned. A dog howls in the distance. Someone responds with a lute. Badly. And just when you think the night is winding down, your cousin bursts into the lane, panting. There's a dragon, he says, dead serious. You blink. In the woods, he insists, by the old Roman stones. You stare. It's big, real big, had smoke coming out its nose. You keep staring. Or, he adds, it was a cow. That feels more likely. You tell him to sleep. He says he'll keep watch. From the roof. You leave him to it. Inside, you light the lump of wax. It flickers like it's nervous. The shadows stretch and twist, but nothing attacks you. Always a win. You lie back, hands on your stomach, and replay the day. You ate, you worked, you laughed once. You didn't starve. That's something. And tomorrow, you'll wake up hungry again. But maybe, just maybe, someone will have seen the dragon too. You open your eyes to birdsong and the unmistakable sound of someone being shouted at in Latin. Nothing like a sunny morning argument between a reeve and a tanner to remind you. You're not exactly free. You stretch beneath your patched wool blanket, wincing as yesterday's chores echo up your spine. Today, you're not scheduled to work the fields. That should be good news. But in 1300s England, your status is like trying to catch fog in a net. Are you a peasant? A freeman? A villain? A serf? Depends on the hour. And who's asking. Technically, you have some rights. Technically. In practice, you're property. Sort of. It's a very squishy sort of servitude, custom-bound, tradition-glued, and always just a royal decree away from ruin. Even your boots, if you had them, could be taxed. You sit up, rub your eyes, and mutter your daily mantra. Don't get arrested today. It's become comforting. You step out into the lane and find a fresh notice nailed to the communal post. The ink is still wet. Someone's declared a new decree. No gathering firewood within sight of the manor house, no fishing without a marked ribbon, and all pigs must wear bells. You blink, this again. The manorial system is built on control. You can farm land, but only the Lord's land. You can own a pig, but only if it doesn't wander into the Lord's cabbage. You can fish, yes, but if the fish look expensive, they technically belong to the crown. You're not sure how the reeve defines expensive-looking fish. One time he claimed a frog was royal. Still find the poor girl who caught it. You pass the notice board and head toward the woods, carrying a basket under your cloak. You're not breaking laws. You're just bending them gently, like willow branches. You gather mushrooms, carefully. You know which ones to avoid. You also know the Lord's forester patrols this grove twice a week. Today's not his day. Probably. You hum softly, low and off-key. Not a song, a disguise for your heartbeat. As you move through the trees, you see a boy tying ribbons to his pigeons. In case they get taxed, he says. You don't ask questions anymore. Back at the village, the carpenter is arguing with a bailiff. Apparently, he was technically born a freeman. but a clerical error during a marriage contract reclassified him as a villain. Now his entire family may owe the manor 6 geese and an apology. Historians still argue whether the line between freemen and villains was truly fluid, or if people just slipped into the lower class, like falling into a well and never climbing out. What you know is this: your status can change if the Lord needs more labor. One day you're John of the Lane. Next day, John the Obligated. And you didn't even do anything except be available. You return to your cottage and find a new message scratched into your door. Someone's marked it with a small X. You stare at it, stomach turning. In some villages, that means you've been summoned for labor, for court, or just for questioning. You sigh, wash your hands with a thimble of water, and walk to the manor house. The steward greets you with a tired look. "We need a runner." You blink. "A what?" "Message to the next village," he says. "6 miles? Quick feet? Quiet mouth?" You nod slowly. You don't really have a choice. He hands you a sealed parchment tied with a green ribbon. "What's it say?" you ask. "Nothing you need to know," he replies. "Just get it there by sundown." So now you're a messenger. A freeman would charge coin for this. You'll get thanks. Maybe. You tuck the parchment into your tunic and set off down the rutted road, dodging carts and dung piles. The countryside is rolling, misty, and full of things that want to trip you. Stones, roots, moral ambiguity. A man riding a donkey passes you and offers no greeting. You respond with the same. The road forks, you choose left. The air smells like wet barley and sheep opinions. A mile in, your stomach reminds you it hasn't been fed today. You find a crabapple tree and steal 3 sour fruits. They taste like regret, still better than boiled moss. 3 miles in, you see a monk on the road ahead. He's carrying a sack labeled relics. You greet him. "What's in the sack?" you ask. "Holy spleen," he replies. You nod. Standard. He offers a blessing. You accept. You feel no different. But he seems pleased. You arrive at the next village just as the sun leans westward. You deliver the parchment to a reeve with one eye and a beard that belongs in a horror story. He opens it, reads it, frowns, then burns it in a small fire. "Message received," he says. You ask what it said. He says, "Don't get involved." Fair enough. On the way back, you pass a woman carrying a goose, wearing a velvet ribbon. You do not question this. You're learning. You return home exhausted, blistered, and deeply curious. There's a bowl of soup on your doorstep. No note, no owner, just warm, cloudy mystery. You eat it. Slowly, carefully, silently grateful. Tomorrow you might be a ditch digger, or a herdsman, or a heretic depending on who misquotes you. Today you were a runner, not a peasant, not a serf. Just a messenger between 2 systems pretending not to break. You're ankle deep in pig mud when it happens. An arrow whistles past your ear and thunks into the side of your shed. You drop the slop bucket. The pigs squeal and scatter like gossip at a funeral. You stand frozen, one hand still gripping the now empty handle, heart hammering like it owes rent. There's a moment of perfect silence. Then someone yells your name. Not lovingly. You duck. The arrow came from the tree line. You squint through the haze of the late afternoon and see movement, just a shadow slipping behind a tree. Whoever it was, they vanished now, probably for the best. You're not trained for combat. You once cut your thumb peeling a turnip. You creep toward the arrow still embedded in your shed. It's crude, handmade, not military, no fletching colors, just plain wood and a tip that looks hammered from an old spoon. This isn't a war arrow. This is a message. You pull it free and turn it over. There's a scrap of cloth tied near the shaft, a pattern you vaguely recognize. Red thread stitched unevenly. Your cousin used to wear that. The one with the sheep tattoo. The one who vanished after that land dispute near the stream. You sigh and wipe mud off your boots. Something tells you you're about to be part of a feud. Again. Feuds in 1300s England are less Romeo and Juliet and more that pig looked at me wrong in 1292, and now your family must suffer. These aren't small arguments. They're multi-generational, inheritance-shaking, cow-stealing, barn-burning vendettas passed down like bad recipes. And if you're unlucky, you're born into one without realizing it, or you marry into it, or someone thinks you did. You walk toward the Reeves house, arrow in hand. He's in the garden arguing with his goose, not metaphorically. Literally, it's refusing to wear its tax bell. Again, you wave the arrow. He looks up. Ah, he says. It's them again. You blink. Them? The Wexhams, he sighs. Still think your uncle owes them a pig. That was decades ago. He shrugs. Pigs hold grudges. By evening, your name is on everyone's lips. You pass the baker, and she nods sympathetically. You know they burned down their cousin's ox shelter just last spring? Great. The blacksmith offers you a horseshoe for luck. It's still hot. Even Alice, the candle maker, pops her head out of her cottage. You're involved in the Wexham mess now? She asks. You nod. She disappears, then returns with a chunk of beeswax and a wooden spoon. For defense, she says. You're not sure how to use it. Maybe both at once? You lie low the next day. Literally, you dig ditches with a group of day laborers on the edge of the fields. Ditch digging is considered neutral work. You can't hold a grudge while up to your elbows in mud. It's peasant law. You work quietly. The others whisper about you. You hear your name linked to the words arrow, curse, and revenge goat. Standard. That night, a boy knocks on your door. He's breathless, wide-eyed, holding a message scratched on a scrap of bark. It's not even subtle. You'll pay for what your kin did to our cabbages. You blink. I don't even like cabbage. The boy shrugs. They said you'd say that? You hand him a crust of bread and tell him to run home fast. He nods and vanishes into the dark. By now you're considering moving. Not far, just, say, 5 miles that direction. Or maybe join a monastery, or become a professional ditch sleeper. But you don't. You stay. Because feuds in this world are meant just conflict, their inheritance, their identity, their history written in small acts of spite. Historians still argue whether these feuds functioned as informal justice systems or just caused endless petty violence. Probably both. You lie awake, listening for footsteps. A dog howls. A chicken clucks in its sleep. You fall asleep clutching a wooden spoon. The next day you make peace. Sort of. You approach the Wexhams at the edge of the green. They're large, loud, and heavily armed with breadsticks. You hold out a peace offering, a dried fish, and a turnip carved into a pig. They stare. You smile. After a long silence, the eldest Wexham says, Your uncle was a thief. You nod. True. But you make a decent pottage. You shrug. I try? She grunts. We'll call it even, for now. The others nod. A truce declared through grumbling and partial eye contact. That night you sleep deeply. No arrows. No threats. Just a dream about a goose in armor. You wake up at peace. Until the next grudge finds you. You wake to shouting. Again. But this time, it's official shouting. You roll off your straw mat and peer through the doorway. A man in a thick wool cloak is ringing a bell and yelling at the top of his lungs. Court day. Justice at the oak. Bring your bones and your grievances. You groan. Nothing ruins a morning like justice. You pull on your tunic, still damp from yesterday's fog, and join the slow drift of villagers heading toward the great oak on the edge of the green. This is where court sessions are held. Not in a grand stone building, no raised bench, no powdered wigs, just a wooden stool for the bailiff, a few trestle tables for documents, if anyone remembers them, and a crowd of people who all know each other's worst secrets. Justice, medieval style. You take your place among the gathering. Someone's already selling roasted chestnuts from a soot-blackened pot. Someone else is selling protective herbs against bad rulings. A child offers to bribe the judge on your behalf for 1 farthing. You politely decline. A goat wanders through the crowd, utterly indifferent. The manor court is in session. Today's judge is Master Edwin, a man with a beard that changes shape depending on the weather. He squints like the truth is just a little too far away, and he carries a ledger that might actually be blank. He raps a stick against the stool. We begin. First up, a dispute over a fence. 2 neighbors are arguing over 3 missing inches of land. The plaintiff swears the fence was moved overnight. The defendant insists it's always been there. Witnesses are called. They contradict each other immediately. One says it moved during the flood last year. Another says it was cursed by a toad. The judge sighs and fines both of them for wasting time. Justice. Next, a pig is accused of theft. Yes, a pig. Apparently, it wandered into a garden, ate some onions, and ran off with a boot. The owner insists the pig is innocent. He calls it to the stand. The pig snorts once, spins in a circle, and falls asleep. Everyone agrees this is suspicious behavior. The pig is sentenced to confinement. In reality, it will be tied to a post and ignored for 3 days. That's justice, too. And then it happens. Your name is called. You blink. For what? The bailiff looks at his list. Trespassing. You frown. Where? He squints. On the Lord's boundary line. That line moves, you mutter. Still counts. You step forward, heart pounding, the crowd stirs. This is entertainment now. You explain. You were collecting mushrooms. You didn't see a marker. You were 5 feet into the woods at most. Probably less. The steward steps up with a parchment. He gestures to a hand-drawn map. The lines are wavy. There's a goat drawn in the corner. You're not sure if it's symbolic. The judge frowns. You hold your breath. Then old Judith hobbles forward. She clears her throat and declares, that land belongs to the fairies. Silence. Someone coughs. The judge leans in. The fairies? Judith nods. I've seen them dancing there. They don't like mushrooms picked. You glance around. Several villagers are nodding. This could go either way. Historians still argue whether courts used superstition to diffuse tension or just leaned into whatever got the crowd to settle down. In this case, it works. The judge waves it off. Very well. No fine. But stay clear of fairy ground. You nod solemnly. Of course. The crowd claps. Someone hands you a wilted flower, possibly a peace offering, possibly a hex. After you step back, the cases continue. Someone is fined for using the manor oven without permission. Someone else is accused of wearing colors above their station. Their blue sash is removed and burned in a solemn ceremony that takes 5 seconds. Another man is charged with stealing a sheep. He insists it followed him home. The sheep is brought into court. It walks directly to the accuser. Case closed. The judge yawns. By midday, the court adjourns. People scatter like geese, muttering about curses and stew. You wander back toward your cottage, relieved to be free, even if only by fairy technicality. You pass the pillory on the way. It's empty today, but you still give it a wide berth. Last month, your neighbor spent 6 hours in it for excessive scolding. That's a real charge. You'd almost earned it yourself during a cabbage shortage. At home, you peel a turnip and think about law. It isn't fair. It isn't consistent. It isn't even particularly written down. But it's what holds the village together. Sort of. Like twine around a leaking barrel. You stir your pot and toss in the last of your salt. You think about Judith's fairy testimony. You decide not to go near that patch of woods again, just in case. That night, the stars are especially bright. Maybe because you're not in jail. Maybe because your eyes are watering from the onion you ate raw. You listen to the breeze move through the trees. You wonder how many invisible borders you've stepped over in your life. Social, spiritual, arbitrary. Tomorrow, you'll stay on the right side. Probably. You wake to a hangover you didn't earn. Your head aches. Your mouth tastes like soot. And someone's hammering on your door like they're being chased by Vikings. You groan and swing your legs off the mat, careful not to step on the wax candle stub you knocked over last night. The door flies open before you even reach it. It's your neighbor's son, wide-eyed, covered in soot, and carrying something wrapped in cloth. They've got mead, he whispers, and books. You blink. Who? The monks. You stare at him. He nods. They're back. You dress in record time. The local monastery is just outside the village, tucked behind a hill, like it's hiding from the century. A mix of stone, timber, and optimism. It smells like beeswax, ink, and sanctity. Most of the time it's quiet, but not today. Today it's alive. You walk up the hill and see carts unloading barrels. People are gathered outside the gate, whispering about relics, miracles, and possibly an elixir made from boiled beetles and angel tears. A monk at the gate waves everyone in with a smile that says, "We have holy alcohol and possibly secrets." Inside, it's a festival. Tables are laid with flatbread, dried fruits, and tiny jugs of mead. Not much, but enough to feel generous. A boy chases a goose through the courtyard, someone singing in bad Latin. You find a monk hunched over a parchment at a desk under a tree. He's tattooed, not a full sleeve, just enough to say, "I've lived." One design looks like a fish, or a saint. Hard to tell. He looks up. "You read?" he asks. You shake your head. He grins. "Perfect, let's begin." You sit and watch as he draws letters in careful black ink. His hands are steady, his expression calm. He writes the word lumen, light, and smiles like he's handing you fire. Monasteries are the secret keepers of this century. Scribes, illuminators, and brewers, all rolled into one. They preserve knowledge the way bees preserve honey. Slowly, obsessively, and with the occasional sting. You ask what he's writing. He leans closer. "A guide to healing." "Oh," you say, "herbs?" He grins wider. "And demons." "Ah." He offers you a drink. Mead. It's strong, sweet, and slides down like melted thyme. He tells you stories between sips. How one monk swears he saw a whale in the sky during a lightning storm. How St. Wulfric once cured a woman's blindness with rose petals and polite yelling. How the bishop keeps sending letters asking about budgetary obedience, and they keep answering in rhyme. You laugh, he pours more. Nearby, a small group of villagers gather around another monk who's showing them the future. It's a spinning wheel. Just a spinning wheel. But he claims it can predict your fortunes based on how fast it turns. A woman spins it once. It creaks and stops immediately. "Try again in spring," the monk says with a perfectly straight face. You try it. It spins 3 full turns. "Lucky in love," he says. You cough into your sleeve. Oh, behind the cloister wall, you find the garden. It smells of sage, mint, and something that might be horseradish or wizardry. A monk kneels beside a row of flowering herbs, muttering prayers and pruning with a knife the size of a sermon. He gestures for you to help. You kneel beside him and start pulling weeds. "This one's deadly," he says, pointing. You pull it immediately. "This one saves lives." You pull that one too. He sighs. "Balance," he mutters. "Balance is everything." You nod, pocket one of the safer-looking leaves, and move on. Back inside, the monks begin distributing little parchment slips with hand-copied prayers, short blessings, and very questionable Latin jokes. One reads, "Blessed is he who wakes before the pigs, for he shall eat the turnip." Another, "Beware of chickens with calm eyes. They plot." You keep that one. Later, as the sun tilts westward, the music slows. The monks begin to hum an old chant, low and rich, like wind moving through stone. It's calming. Even the goats stop arguing. One monk tells you in a hushed tone that he's working on a potion for memory. He lists the ingredients: honey, vinegar, crushed ivy, and a feather that saw something tragic. You ask if it works? He shrugs. "Sometimes I remember my own name." "Fair enough." You thank them for the mead and the lessons, and as you turn to leave, the tattooed monk presses something into your hand. A tiny bottle, sealed with wax. "For sleep," he says. "What's in it?" "Depends who drinks it." Reassuring. Oh. That night, you sip a drop, just one. It tastes like mint, rain, and a secret someone once whispered through a chapel keyhole. You sleep like the dead. Not the scary kind, the peaceful kind, the kind that aren't being summoned or exorcised. You dream of books that sing and bees that teach you Latin. And for once, you don't wake up starving. The next morning, you wake feeling unusually rested. No rat attacks, no exploding stove, no one shouting about stolen goats. Just silence. It's suspicious. You sit up slowly and sniff the air. Someone's burning sage, or possibly just failed at starting a cooking fire. Either way, it smells sharp and herbal and vaguely guilty. You step outside and stretch. The sky is a sheet of low gray cloud, heavy with the promise of absolutely nothing good. Fog clings to the rooftops like gossip. And then, of course, it begins. The church bell rings, but not the usual solemn clang of mass or court. This is faster, urgent, off-tempo. People stop what they're doing. Someone mutters, "Not again." A nun walks past, coughing. Uh-oh. You know this one. Plague. Maybe. Not confirmed plague, but coughs, shivers, and panicked glances are enough. You're not a doctor, but then again, neither is anyone else. The best you've got is Brother Mallory, who once claimed to cure headaches with honey and threats. He's already in the square now, waving a small wooden cross and shouting at people to stay calm while vigorously sprinkling everyone with holy water, which might help, or might just be someone's bath water. You move back. A lot. Oh, the village divides instantly. Some run to the church. Some run away from the church. And some, like you, just sort of stand there hoping no one breathes directly on them. The local friar declares that all sick people must wear bells. To warn others. It's supposed to be helpful. It just makes everything sound like an eerie livestock parade. A man walks by coughing into a handkerchief and whispering, "Hail Marys." His bell jangles with each step. A child sneezes, and 5 chickens scatter like trained actors. Marjorie the Loud is already on her doorstep, shouting that the baker's wife cursed the bread last week, and that's why everyone's falling ill. You sigh. Someone brings up leprosy. Someone else brings up sin. Someone accuses a neighbor of being too pale lately. The accused is a milkmaid. She's always pale. Logic has left the building. You retreat to the edge of the village and take refuge with old Judith, the only person who seems completely unfazed. She's sitting beside a small fire, stirring something in a pot that smells like onions and vengeance. They'll blame the cats again, she mutters. You blink. Cats? Always the cats, she says, nodding. Last time they said they were agents of the devil. Killed 100 of them. You stare. But don't cats eat the rats? She grins toothlessly. Exactly. Fringe fact. In many parts of Europe during plague years, people did kill cats because superstition said they were cursed. Which, of course, only made things worse, since rats, the real disease carriers, got free real estate. You thank Judith and back away slowly. Back in the village square, the air is thick with incense, sage smoke, and general paranoia. You spot Alice the candlemaker wearing a garlic necklace and a shawl soaked in vinegar. She claims it's invisible armor. You believe in her more than the logic, but you still take a step back. A friar hands you a pamphlet titled Virtue Against Vapors. It contains advice like, pray daily even while vomiting. Avoid eye contact with coughing sinners. Eat bread soaked in ale blessed by 3 bishops. You nod solemnly. Fold the pamphlet. Consider using it to start a fire. And then comes the real shock. A wedding. Yes. Someone today has decided to get married. You join the crowd gathering at the church steps. A couple stands there awkwardly. He's wearing his second best tunic. She's wearing a crown of weeds and looking like she'd rather be milking cows. The priest arrives, coughing into his sleeve. They say the vows quickly. He blesses them. They kiss. Then both immediately take 5 steps back and drink from separate mugs of cider. Everyone claps, quietly. You're not sure if it's celebration or confusion, but it's kind of beautiful. You drift home mid-afternoon, passing a group of people painting crosses on their doorways. Not the scary kind, the hopeful kind, to keep evil spirits out, or in. Someone selling clean air pouches, little cloth bags filled with lavender, mint, and ground-up chalk. You buy one? Why not? It smells better than your tunic anyway. Back at your cottage, you light a small fire, boil what's left of your turnip stash, and wrap yourself in a blanket that used to belong to a cow. Probably. You sip hot water and stare into the flames. Everyone's terrified, but no one's leaving, because there's nowhere to go. You think about how fragile everything is, how fast the world flips, and how people, strange, loud, resilient, keep trying to get married in the middle of it. That night, as you drift into sleep, you hear bells in the distance. Soft, slow. Not all of them are warning signs. Some are just wind chimes, trying to sound like hope. You wake to birdsong and the distinct sound of something very large breathing just outside your window. You freeze. Slowly, quietly, you lift the edge of the curtain, that is, a sack you've tied to a stick, and peek out. It's a cow. Dead. You stare at it. The cow stares back, lifeless and somehow still judgmental. Great. Your only tie to dairy, fertilizer, and winter survival has just expired overnight. The air smells faintly wrong, like sour milk and bad luck. You step outside and prod the cow gently. Nothing. Rigor mortis hasn't even set in yet. You scan the horizon, half expecting some divine explanation to ride in on a chariot. Instead, it's Alice. She walks up holding a basket of turnips and says, "Huh." Then she pokes the cow and says, "That's not good." You nod. "It was fine yesterday." She squints. Did you milk it during a storm? No. Did you let it eat mushrooms? No. She lowers her voice. Did you insult a monk? You blink. Not this week. She crosses her arms. Could be a curse then. You sigh. Numb. You drag the cow into the clearing with the help of 3 teenagers, a rope, and a lot of grunting. Everyone gathers around like it's a fallen night. Suggestions fly. It's the weather. It's the plague. It's Marjorie's eye twitch again. No, it's bad hay. It's St. Alban getting revenge. The theories spiral. Someone swears they saw a comet 3 nights ago. Another insists the cow was never quite right and probably invited this. A boy pokes it with a stick and declares, "Yep, definitely cursed." You bury your face in your hands. Matt, the Reeve arrives. He's grumpy as usual and wearing a cloak that smells like onions. He examines the body, mutters something about common illness, then declares you owe a fine. A fine, you ask? Improper disposal of livestock. It died 5 minutes ago. Still counts. You trudge toward the local wise woman. Not Judith. This one's newer. Younger. Wears 12 rings and claims to talk to plants. You explain the cow situation. She listens, nods, throws salt in a circle, and tells you. Your cow has been unbalanced by lunar tension. You blink. That's not a diagnosis. She insists it is, and prescribes a mix of sage, nettle, crushed coal, and recited apology. You nod politely, thank her for the advice, and consider instead just digging a really deep hole. By midday, the cow's body starts to smell. You and 2 cousins dig the pit. It's exhausting. By the time you finish, your arms are shaking, and the sun's high and hot. You whisper a short prayer, mostly for the cow, and maybe a little for yourself. Back at your cottage, you stare at your empty pasture. It looks bigger now. Sadder. You relied on that cow. Milk for your stew. Dung for your garden. Company when Alice was too busy to insult you. And now it's just quiet. People start to visit. Sympathy comes in strange forms. One neighbor gives you a half loaf of bread and a poem. Another gives you a rock shaped like a heart. Possibly. Judith arrives with a bottle of something strong-smelling and says, "Drink this and don't ask." You drink it. You probably shouldn't have. You can see sounds now. Later, you sit by your hearth and think about mortality. Not yours, though that's always a possibility, but animal mortality. How quickly things change. How dependent you are on fragile hoofed creatures who eat grass and sometimes stare at walls for hours. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants developed emotional bonds with their livestock or viewed them purely as utility. Based on your current state of sadness, you vote bond. You miss that cow already. You miss the sound she made when she was chewing. You miss the way she looked at you like you were barely worth her breath. She was honest. You respected that. And then, just as you're drifting into this deep, bovine grief spiral, a boy runs into the square yelling, "There's a glowing chicken in the woods." You blink. Alice pokes her head out and says, "See, this is what happens when you mess with lunar tension." You follow the commotion anyway. Because why not? At this point, anything feels like progress. You find the chicken. It's not glowing. It's just covered in spilled lantern oil. Still, it's running in circles, like it's delivering a prophecy. Everyone stands in awe. A monk takes notes. A woman declares it's the return of St. Egbert. You sigh. Then you laugh. And then you really laugh. Losing a cow is awful. But life somehow goes on. That night, you sit alone in your empty pasture. A soft breeze rustles the weeds. The stars blink overhead. You whisper goodbye to the cow. You promise not to name the next one. You probably will. It starts with a tolling bell. Not a church bell, not the handheld clang of the market crier. No, this bell is lower, slower, hungrier. You know that sound. Everyone does. It means trouble, but not the kind with wolves or floods. This is man-made trouble. Torches and ropes, and maybe a knife tucked into someone's boot, just in case the sermon gets spicy. You sit up from your straw mat and see the glow through your window. Orange, pulsing, and too rhythmic to be sunrise. You swing your cloak over your shoulders and step outside. The village is tense. People move in clusters. Quiet voices, shadows flickering on walls. Someone runs past holding a pail, but not for a fire. That would make too much sense. Instead, they're heading toward the boundary road. A rival village is coming, and they're bringing torches. You hustle toward the village green, where the reeve is assembling what could generously be called defenses. A few wet sacks, a bucket of mud, and one guy holding a long stick like it's a lance. You squint through the fog. You see the outlines first. Half a dozen shapes walking up the hill. Someone singing. Badly. Then you hear the hiss of pitch torches. Alice appears at your side. She's holding a spoon again. You don't ask. You whisper, "Why are they here?" She shrugs. Could be about the sheep incident, or the pond rights, or that time someone threw a turnip at their priest. That was 5 years ago. Some turnips leave a mark, she says grimly. The rival villagers stop at the edge of the green. Their leader, a large man with a feather in his hat and what looks like painted-on eyebrows, steps forward. He calls out, "We come for justice." A few people murmur. You call back, "What kind of justice?" He shouts, "The hot kind." The reeve looks at you. That doesn't sound promising. And then it starts. One of them throws a torch. Not at a building, yet, but at the well post. It bounces harmlessly. Still, it's a declaration. You grab a bucket. So does everyone else. Water is flung. Torches are knocked aside. Mud is scooped and flung like snowballs. A dog bites someone's boot and doesn't let go. It's not a battle. It's a wet, frantic, surprisingly musical skirmish. Someone starts singing a hymn while flinging cabbages. You're not sure what side you're on anymore. By some miracle, or maybe just disinterest, the rival village retreats. They take their torches, they take their shouting, they leave behind one goose and a hat. The reeve declares it a victory. You sit down in the mud and breathe out for what feels like the first time all week. Later, while rebuilding a fence that mysteriously collapsed during the fray, you learn the truth. It wasn't about the sheep, or the pond, or the turnip. It was about a song. Apparently, someone from your village sang a ballad that included a line about their miller having bread hands and pig thoughts. And they heard about it. So naturally, torches. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers were more prone to violent outbursts due to social pressure or boredom. But after today, you're leaning toward yes. At the evening meal, cabbage soup and one bruised apple. Everyone's buzzing with energy. It's not every day you fend off a rival hamlet with mud and vegetables. You feel strangely proud. Also sore. Also pretty sure someone hit you with a shovel at one point. Alice sits beside you and passes the spoon between her hands like a trophy. "I didn't even need to use it," she says. You smile. "Next time." She nods solemnly. "Next time." That night, you repair your door, patch your cloak, and scrape mud from your boots. You think about how fragile peace is, how quickly it ignites. One word, one look, one turnip in the wrong direction. You lie back and stare at the rafters. The goose left behind is still honking somewhere. The stars flicker, soft and distant. And for now, no one is on fire. They say the king is coming. You laugh when you first hear it. Out loud. Right in the middle of feeding the chickens, one of them looks offended. Because let's be honest, kings don't come here. Not to your little smoke-stained, mud-soaked corner of the world. You're a speck on the map. Less than a speck. You're the smudge someone left when they sneezed on the parchment. But the rumor spreads fast, and suddenly, everyone's pretending they've always been ready to host royalty. By midday, the reeve is pacing in front of the church, barking orders and tripping over a goat. Sweep the paths, hide the dung, put something in the well to make it sparkle. Like what, someone calls. Just something shiny. Alice suggests, throwing in a copper brooch. The reeve looks like he might cry. You're assigned to cheering practice. Yes, that's a real thing now. You and a dozen other villagers are lined up and instructed to rehearse a respectable cheer. Not too loud, scares the horse. Not too soft, insults the crown. And no clapping. Clapping is for fools and outlaws. You try a cheer. It comes out like a cough with ambition. The steward nods. Acceptable. The streets are cleaned. Flowers are gathered. Someone even washes the outside of the church. With actual water. You've never seen it look this pale. A pig is dressed in ribbons. The village only has the one. Everyone agrees it's symbolic. By evening, a lookout is posted on the ridge. You take a turn. You see nothing. No banners, no trumpets, no shining armor cresting the hills. Just sheep and mist. And the slow realization that no one actually knows which king this is, or which direction he's coming from, or if he's real. Still, preparations continue. The next morning, a trumpet sounds. Well, more of a horn. And technically it's a boy holding a goose and making noises into a hollowed turnip. Still, morale skyrockets. Everyone lines up. You're holding a basket of flowers. Someone else is holding a loaf of bread that was made entirely of lentils because that's all you had. The pig is panicking. And then, dust on the horizon. A horse. A rider. And behind him, a small party of 5. Dressed in velvet, with cloaks and banners and real, actual trumpets. It's happening. You squint. The man in front raises a hand. He's wearing a crown. It's small, very shiny. A gasp ripples through the crowd. Alice whispers, "That's not the king." You whisper back, "What?" "That's a king," she clarifies. "Not the one." And she's right. This is a minor noble, a cousin of a cousin. Maybe someone's steward pretending to be someone important. But he's got feathers in his hat and gold on his shoes, so it's enough. The reeve kneels. Everyone else kneels. You kneel. The pig does not. See, Anna. The noble dismounts. Walks through the village slowly. He doesn't say much. Just nods. Accepts the lentil bread. Pets the pig like it's a small, uncooperative dog. Then he gives a speech. Something about loyalty. And virtue, and the importance of knowing one's station. You half listen, mostly because the bread smells burnt. Then he gets to the point. Taxes. A scroll is unrolled. He reads new levies on barley, wool, and something called ambiguous goods. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds expensive. He smiles the whole time. Then he declares the village pleasing and leaves. Just like that. You watch the cloud of dust settle. Then you all stand, and stare at each other. Moans. Back in the square, someone mutters, "Wasn't even the real king." Someone else says, "Did we just get taxed by a cousin?" Another says, "At least he didn't arrest anyone." A fair point. Moki. The Reeve declares it a success. He rewards the pig with a peeled apple. Alice steals the brooch back from the well, and you go home with your cheer still stuck in your throat. That night, you light a candle and think about power. How it arrives on a horse, smiles like a friend, and takes your oats. How it wears gold, even when it's borrowed. How it doesn't have to be real to matter. Historians still argue whether villagers understood the intricacies of noble ranks, or simply bowed to whatever had a plume and a sword. You know the answer. You saw the sword. You bowed. And now your barley costs more. The wind is sharp today. Not the playful kind that tugs at your cloak like a curious child. No, this is a hungry wind. A teeth-bared, bone-slicing wind. It whistles through the trees like it's searching for something. And maybe it finds it. Because this morning, the sky is low, gray. Heavy with a silence that sits on your shoulders. Winter has arrived. Not officially, but you know. The birds know too. They vanished. You step outside and sniff the air. Cold. Bitter. The kind of cold that settles into your joints like a landlord collecting rent. And you don't have the coin. You check your food stores. There's a turnip, a piece of hard cheese the size of a spoon, and a handful of grain you were hoping to plant next spring. That's it. You sigh, stretch your back, and start walking. Oh, the village is quiet. People don't talk much when they're hungry. Words take energy. Eyes are down, voices are low. The baker's oven hasn't been lit in 2 days. The mill's wheel turns, but slowly. No grain, just habit. You pass old Judith. She's chewing bark. You nod. She nods. The Reeve calls a meeting. He doesn't smile anymore. He used to. Kind of. Now his face is permanently fixed in deep concern mode. He says there's not enough to go around. The stores are low. The tithe barns are locked. The Lord has gone to his winter estate, somewhere warmer, no doubt, and left the steward in charge. And the steward is suddenly very fond of saying things like rationing and exceptional circumstances. And this potato is not for you. So the black market opens. Not loudly, but it opens. In the alleys, behind the chapel. Under baskets, coins, favors, and rumors all start trading hands. You see a boy selling dried apple slices for more than a blanket's worth. Someone offers miracle barley, which is probably just wet gravel. You clutch your grain pouch tighter. Oh, you boil water, add a turnip shaving, drink it like soup. You try not to cry when your stomach growls. Not because of pride, but because tears waste salt. Then the rumors start. The miller's gone missing. Vanished in the night. No note, no struggle, just gone. His mill still creaks in the wind, slowly, like it's trying to remember his footsteps. Some say he fled with stolen grain. Some say he was taken by forest spirits. Others say nothing at all. Just look down and count their dried peas. Historians still argue whether such disappearances were due to crime, starvation, or quiet desperation. You know what it feels like. Cold. Month. A week passes. You dream of bread. Not just eating it, baking it. The feel of dough, the smell of crust. You wake with the taste of air in your mouth and a hunger that feels like grief. Alice brings you a bone. Was soup, she says. You thank her. It still smells faintly of thyme. The chapel starts giving sermons about endurance, about Job, about patience, about how the Lord feeds the birds of the field and will surely feed us. You look up. No birds. Just smoke. And not the warm kind. Snow falls. It's early. Too early. Thin at first, then thicker. It piles on thatch roofs and bowing trees. The fields disappear. So do the paths. The well freezes. The water you saved turns to ice in its jug. You break it with a spoon. You chew it like truth. Then one morning, you wake to the sound of someone chewing. You sit up. It's a dog. Eating a boot. Your boot. You chase it away and stare at the half-eaten leather like maybe it'll apologize. It doesn't. You wrap your feet in rags and go to the woods. Ma, there's nothing in the woods. The mushrooms are gone. The berries are dust. Even the squirrels look offended when you pass. You dig through snow, searching for roots you barely recognize. You find one that looks like a worm and smells like punishment. You eat it anyway. You survive. Thus, that night, you dream of stew. Thick, rich, floating with potatoes and meat and onion. You wake. You lick the side of your bowl. Nothing changes. By the second week, someone dies. You don't ask who. You don't go to the funeral. No one does. There's no food for a wake. The body is buried quietly in a shallow grave, marked with a cross made from firewood you probably could have used. You stand in the distance. Say nothing. Think of stew. By the third week, the snow tastes better than the broth. You chew it. Imagine it's something more. Alice gives you a riddle. What's red, round, and grows in summer? You say, a strawberry. She says, no, a memory. You want to laugh. You do. It's dry. You light a candle. You wrap your cloak tighter. You press your back against the wall and tell yourself spring will come. Eventually, you believe it. Almost. The cow is gone. The snow is deeper. And now your neighbor's rooster is missing. You wouldn't normally care. You've never liked that rooster. He crowed at midnight, at noon, at nothing. He once bit your hand for looking at him wrong. But today, it matters. Because when the rooster goes missing in 1300s England, there are only 3 possible explanations. He froze to death. Someone ate him. Witchcraft. Guess which one Marjorie picks. She's standing in the square shouting, "It's her. I saw her in the night, whispering to the wind." You follow her pointing finger. Of course. Old Judith. She's hunched beside the well, stirring something in a pot that smells suspiciously like onions and unprocessed fear. She looks up, sees the crowd forming, and sighs the sigh of someone who's been blamed for too many things already. Not this again, she mutters. But yes, this again. The village gathers like a storm. Everyone has an opinion. She talks to her cat. She walks in circles. She wears too many scarves. She smiled during the famine. Smiled. The Reeve rubs his temples. He knows where this is going. So do you. Judith just shrugs. If I had real power, she says, would I still live next to a leaking pigsty? Nobody answers. You step forward. You say, her stew saved me last winter. Someone else adds, she gave me salve when I had boils. Another says, she helped birth my cow. Marjorie yells, and then the cow died. Silence. Judith looks up. All cows die eventually. Marjorie narrows her eyes. Spoken like a witch. Historians still argue whether accusations of witchcraft were driven by fear, misogyny, or just really bad winters. But in a hungry village, one strange look can get you strung up by superstition. The Reeve suggests a test. Judith sighs again. She's heard this one before. Ma, you follow the procession to the riverbank. They call it a trial. It's not. It's humiliation with frostbite. If she floats, she's a witch. If she sinks, she's innocent. In other words, drown or be hunted. Alice leans close and mutters, "This is why I don't smile anymore." You nod. Then you step forward. She's not going in that river. You don't even know where the bravery comes from. Maybe it's the hunger. Maybe it's the cold. Maybe it's the idea that if they turn on her, they'll turn on you next. Or anyone. For anything. Judith raises one eyebrow. Then the Reeve clears his throat. "I've decided," he says quickly. "We don't need the test." A collective breath. No one moves. He adds, "But she has to promise not to be a witch." Everyone looks at Judith. She folds her arms. "Fine, I promise." Someone whispers, "That's exactly what a witch would say." You throw them a look. They stop talking. The crowd disperses. Judith sits back by the well and resumes stirring. She glances at you. "You ruined a perfectly good stew," she says. You grin. "Was it cursed?" She grins back. "Only mildly." Later that day, the rooster returns. Covered in soot. Smelling like mead. He struts through the square like he's seen things he'll never discuss. Everyone pretends not to notice. Marjorie says, "Could still be witchcraft." But quieter this time. That evening, the church holds a sermon on temptation, sorcery, and the dangers of left-handedness. You don't attend. You sit by your fire with a bowl of thin broth and think about justice. How it's louder when the wind is sharp. How it turns quickest on the quiet ones. How survival sometimes means defending the wrong people at the right time. You fall asleep wondering if there really are witches in the village. Maybe. But if so, you hope they're warm. You hope they're fed. And you hope they're on your side. The fire starts with a prayer. A soft one. Whispered. In the chapel. By candlelight. You're not there to hear it, of course. You're at home, trying to patch a hole in your cloak with a splintered needle and thread that used to belong to a fishing net. But you'll hear about the prayer later. Everyone will. It was for rain. It's always for rain. And sometimes, rain answers in the wrong direction. Idaki. The first thing you notice is the smell. Not smoke exactly, not at first. More like warmth, where warmth shouldn't be. Like someone left the hearth burning too high, or a spark danced where it wasn't welcome. Then you hear the shouting. You grab your boots, don't even lace them, you run. By the time you reach the chapel, half the roof is ablaze. People are screaming. Buckets are flying. The bell tolls. Frantic, panicked, uneven. Alice is already dragging a barrel across the square. "Again?" you shout. "Always again," she shouts back. Fires in a medieval village are not accidents. They are inevitabilities. Thatch roofs, dry timber, open flames, no chimneys, no fireproofing, no insurance. Just prayers, luck, and the hope that someone, somewhere remembered where the well is. You fill a bucket and run toward the flames. You pass a boy carrying 2 cups of water like it's going to help. You pass Marjorie throwing flour at the blaze. You pass a monk trying to bless the fire into submission. It's chaos. You form a line with the others. Pass bucket, throw water, repeat. Your arms burn. Your hands blister. Your cloak catches a spark, and you slap it out without thinking. The fire is laughing. The chapel roof groans. And then it collapses. With a roar like thunder and angels falling sideways. Everyone jumps back. Alice pulls you away just in time. A rain of sparks chases you. But you're not hurt. Not yet. Mo. The flames leap to the house next door, then to the barn behind it, then to the roof across the lane. The fire has learned to walk, and now it's running. Someone yells, "It's a curse." Someone else yells, "It's punishment." Judith yells, "It's fire," which is honestly the most accurate. You focus on saving what you can. A baby, a sack of grain, a goat with one horn and no sense of self-preservation. You drag it all into the square. The fire rages behind you. By dawn, it's over. The fire is dead. But so is half the village. Not the people, miraculously, mostly intact, but the buildings, the storage sheds, the tools, the grain reserves, the chapel. Gone. You sit in the mud, dazed, blackened with soot, hands trembling. Someone offers you a crust of bread. You chew without tasting. You watch as the sun rises over a skeleton village. People wander, hollow-eyed. Someone weeps into their apron. The steward appears and begins making a list. Damage, losses, fines? Yes, fines. Because someone's hearth wasn't sealed properly, and someone else didn't respond fast enough, and the chapel should have been wet-blanketed. Historians still argue whether punitive fines after disasters were tools of control or desperate attempts to fund rebuilding. Probably both. You don't care right now. You're too tired to argue with history. That afternoon, the bishop's envoy arrives. In a shiny robe. With a parchment. He offers prayers and condolences. Then asks for donations. You stare at him. So does Alice. The reeve offers a bundle of singed carrots. The envoy accepts them like treasure. Judith starts organizing a rebuilding crew before the sun sets. She's barking orders, mixing mud, stacking bricks like someone half her age. You watch her from your corner and realize this woman is the village now. No magic, just grit. That night, you lie on the floor of someone else's house. Yours is mostly smoke. You wrap your cloak tighter, listen to the quiet, and try not to dream of flames. You tell yourself this is normal, that it happens every few years, that you're lucky to be alive. You say it enough times that it almost becomes true. But still, you can't stop thinking about that first prayer. Soft, hopeful, and how sometimes hope burns. They hang him at dawn. You're not sure what he did, at least not exactly. But by the time the sun crests the treetops, the whole village is out, bundled in cloaks, eyes red from smoke and sleep, staring toward the center of the green, where the wooden platform creaks with anticipation. He's already up there, bound at the wrists, shirt torn, face unreadable. You don't know his name, but you know his shoes. You traded him onions last week. The reeve reads a scroll aloud. Something about theft. Something about betrayal. Something about willful disruption of the Lord's order. Nobody really listens. They're staring at the rope. Someone coughs. Someone else weeps quietly behind a shawl. The pigs are quiet this morning. Even the rooster, yes, that rooster makes no sound. Justice in the 1300s doesn't always come with a reason. It comes with a rope, a crowd, and the kind of silence that presses into your bones like frost. You stand near Alice, she doesn't speak. She just watches. When the stool is kicked away, a woman near the front gasps. The man jerks, then goes still. The reeve clears his throat. Let this be a lesson. You go home. You say nothing. Everyone does. Later, rumors flutter through the village like ash. He stole a sack of grain. He cursed the steward's horse. He tried to flee the manor. He was caught selling prayers for money. You don't know which is true. Maybe all of them. Maybe none. It doesn't matter now. By midday, the body is taken down. A few men wrap it in old cloth. They bury it near the edge of the woods. No cross. No name. Just a patch of disturbed soil under a tree that leans like it's listening. That afternoon, the air feels off, heavy, still. You tend your garden, or what's left of it. Pull weeds that look more alive than the sprouts. You pour water from a cracked jug and watch it vanish into the earth like a secret. Marjorie passes by and says, "He should have known better." You don't respond, because you're not sure you wouldn't have done the same. You remember something Judith once said: when the rules break people faster than they break bread, expect broken people. You didn't understand it then. You do now. No. In the evening, a group of children gather near the green. They build a small bonfire. Quiet. No shouting. No singing. Just the snap of twigs. You sit near them, not part of them, and watch the flames dance. Alice brings a bowl of stew and sets it beside you. You nod. She doesn't sit. She just walks away. The fire crackles. The wind carries smoke toward the forest. You close your eyes and remember the man's face, not at the rope, but before. When he laughed. When he held a wedge of bread like it was treasure. When he traded you onions. And now he's a lesson. A warning. A name erased before it ever had a chance to spread. Historians still argue whether executions like this maintained order or simply suppressed fear beneath layers of silence. But in this moment, you know one thing. You're going to remember him, even if no one else does. That night, the stars shine brighter than usual, as if they're trying to make up for something. You lie on your mat and whisper his name, not because it changes anything, but because forgetting would feel like another rope. And you've seen enough of those. It begins, oddly, with a comet. A bright smear in the sky, like someone scratched the heavens with a burning stick. It appears one morning just before dawn, streaking across the horizon in a blaze of pale fire, and then settling into the eastern sky like it owns the place. You stare at it. Everyone does. Because a comet means one thing: the end. Or at least, the possibility of it. By breakfast, the entire village is buzzing. Judith says it's a sign of upheaval. The priest says it's divine punishment. Marjorie says it's because someone still hasn't paid their tithes. You suspect she means you. You chew a piece of barley bread and glance toward the horizon. The comet's still there, quiet, watching. Then the church bell tolls. But not the usual way, not even the frantic way. This is slow, measured, and terribly expectant. People gather in the square again, as if drawn there. Nobody says end of the world, not out loud, but you hear it in the silence between steps. The steward appears with a parchment. The king has declared a fast, he says, until the skies are clear. Someone whispers, "What if they don't clear?" Nobody answers. The reeve calls for mass prayers. The priest begins a sermon that lasts 3 hours. His voice cracks. He weeps. He throws ash in the air and asks forgiveness for sins not yet committed. Half the village kneels. The other half pretends to cough and walks away. You stay. You're not sure why. Maybe because you want to be part of something when it ends. Or maybe because you need someone else to tell you what to feel. That evening, someone swears they saw the river run backward. Someone else says the birds stopped singing. And someone, God's help you, claims a calf was born with 2 heads. You ask for proof. They draw it in mud. It looks like a goat, or maybe a mushroom. You stop asking. Milk. You sit by your fire. There's no warmth in it. Not because it's weak, but because your bones are already cold. The comet glows brighter now. It doesn't flicker, just burns. The chapel is open all night. People wander in and out. A friar sings alone in Latin until his voice cracks. Judith lights candles on her doorstep, mumbling to stars long dead. Alice makes soup, just in case. You write your name in the dirt beside your door. Not for anyone else, just so you'll know you were here. Then the bell rings again. It's not the church bell. It's a small one, soft, uneven. A child's bell. You follow the sound and find a girl standing near the well, holding a piece of cheese wrapped in linen. "It's for the sky," she says. You nod. It makes as much sense as anything else. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages feared the comet more than they feared plague or war. Some say it was awe. Others say it was terror. You think it's both. It feels holy, and wrong, and real. Or by midnight, the comet is a white scar across the sky. The stars tremble beside it. You lie on your back in the grass and stare. You wonder what people far away are doing. If they're praying, or hiding, or whispering to their animals, or holding hands and singing. You hum a tune you haven't heard since spring. You don't know the words. You sing anyway. And then the sky turns. Just slightly. Just enough. And the comet begins to fade. Not vanish. Just soften. Like a threat making up its mind. You sit up. Breathe in the night air. Cold. Clean. Alive. And you realize something. The world didn't end today. Not yet. Not here. You look at the sky and whisper thanks. Not to a saint, not to a god. Just to the sky itself. For staying. Just a little longer. The fire's out. The sky is quiet. And for the first time in weeks, the village sleeps. Even the dogs don't bark tonight. Even the wind seems too tired to knock against the shutters. Just a low hum across the fields, rustling what little remains of the frost-bitten grass. You lie still, wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own, listening to the crackle of embers, soft as whispering teeth. Your fingers rest on your chest, not folded, just resting, like they've run out of things to hold. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs in their sleep. Someone dreams of bread. You dream of warmth. Not the fire kind, but the kind that settles behind your ribs and says, you made it through. Because you did. This place tried to swallow you, with hunger, with cold, with laws, with fire, with silence, and yet you're still here. It's not about winning. It never was. It's about lasting. You see your breath rise in the moonlight, slow and steady. That's all that's needed now. Just that. Just staying. Tomorrow the rooster will scream again. The mud will grab your boots. Someone will argue over fence lines. The stew will taste like yesterday, and hope will be shaped like a shriveled root. But that's tomorrow. Tonight? You are still. You are safe. And the stars are still watching, no longer wild with fire, just blinking gently like tired eyes. You close yours, and in that soft, final moment before sleep, you let the weight slip from your shoulders. The world doesn't need holding right now. It just needs you to rest.